If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A lot of it is experience that you have and I have, is knowing what questions to ask potential buyers and potential sellers. For sellers, it's, I always start with things like, have you talked to a financial advisor to see what, basically, if you can give them an estimate of what it might be worth, and you can't do that. You can't tell what the market's going to do, but whether you say it's worth 2 million, 4 million, 6 million range, what does your advisor say about that? I've been through it before, and I just told a couple clients in the last few days, simply this too will pass. I mean, we had COVID, we had the real estate collapse, the Great Recession in like 09 or so.
Yep.
9/11. We've gone through it. We're in the spring of 2025 now. You're right. Uncertainty is the word I saw. There are buyers of all types and sizes when it comes to experience and abilities. And just saying I want to do it doesn't mean you can. And sometimes it's good for them to have an advisor that they're going to pay money to, because that's the first test. I am really serious. I'm going to hire someone.
Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with John Martinka, and he is the founder and runs Nokomis Advisory Services. Did I get both of those right, or even come close on either one of them?
You got the name right, and the company name is Nokomis.
Nokomis, okay. So you've been in this space for a while. You've got multiple books, like 5 books out. Some of the ones you guys out there might know: Exiting with Style and Grace and More Money. This says, if they can sell pet rocks, why can't you sell your business for what you want? And those type of things. You've been doing this for, looks like 30 plus years, if I'm being nice.
Almost 30 years. Yeah, about 30 years.
Yeah, about 30 years. Cool, okay. And so I'm really excited to have you here today. We always start with the origin story. What got you into helping people buy and sell companies?
Serendipity. So I was a Rotary Club president, and the gentleman who was the president the year before me, we got to know each other pretty well. All those board meetings and things for a few years. And we were a little closer in age than a lot of the other people in the club. It was a brand new club. And so some veterans had come over to start it. And our wives got along, and so we did some hanging out. And one day I got the comment of something like, "I've always thought you'd be good in this business." And he knew I liked but didn't love what I was doing. And, gave it some thought, and said, this seems to fit. I like working with people. I like variety. I don't have the engineer brain that I can work on the same bridge project 3 years in a row, maybe not even 3 hours in a row. And when you're working in M&A, buy, sell, you have different stuff every hour of every day, it seems.
Yeah, I get it. I'm severely ADHD, and this is the ADHD guy's dream, right? Everything's new, everything's creative. I constantly get, why do they do that? Right, and then there's always a little bit of a puzzle and mystery to things, right? A lot of these businesses, they grew organically over years, and not by design, but sometimes by happenstance, they've created something that is incredible. But a lot of times when you're looking at it in hindsight, it's remarkable what you'll find in some of these companies.
Yeah, you're right. And when people look at it from the outside, they go, I can't figure out how they're making so much money with what they're doing or not doing. And that's what opportunity is to a lot of buyers, is these are really nice businesses that
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
maybe don't have the technology that's come out in the last 5 or 10 years, or using AI, or just not having the systems and documenting what they do over and over to replicate easier.
Now, you've rode this ride through multiple up cycles in the market, down cycles in the market, different politicians in the appropriate place. We don't usually talk about politics here, but I do want to set aside some time in this conversation today where we'll get to what's our current economic cycle, and how do you think that the buying and selling of business is impacted by that, and what does the future look like? But let's start off with talking a little bit about more of what you guys do, because you told me right before we hit the record button, your daughter works with you. She does the sell side, you do the buy side. How did that come about? How did you end up becoming a family-run business?
Well, Jessica's worked with me since 2018, and I've done a lot of work for buyers. In fact, my first book out now, about a dozen years, is titled Buying a Business That Makes You Rich.
Mm-hmm.
Toss your job, not the dice. And it's aimed at the individual buyer, the corporate executive that says, I've had enough of the corporate world, or the corporate world says, we've had enough of you. And they've got the skills, and they've been able over the years to pick up experience managing people, processes, money, and most importantly, and we hope most importantly, enthusiasm, which is culture. And it's not quite I do one and she does the other. It's blended, but she decided after a while that she preferred to work with on the sell side more than the buy side.
Mm-hmm.
And we set up this separate company so she could have some equity. And we target the lower to little market, deals of 5 to about 15 million. We don't do Main Street businesses, and we don't want to work where the true investment bankers work. They've got more resources than we do. And we want to bring a professional touch to that, very professional touch to that market.
Now, you're up in the northern part of the West Coast, right? You're up around Seattle, Washington, what you said earlier?
Right, Kirkland, Washington.
Now, that's a pretty good sized area. Is that where you guys primarily do business? Have you helped people buy and sell companies outside of your area?
Yeah, we concentrate on the Northwest, Seattle, Portland, etc. Over the years, at least 15 states and Canada that we've had clients. These days, especially with technology, it's easier than ever to work with someone in a different location. Zoom and Teams and Google Meet, even local. Sometimes a buyer will want to meet with the owner and they say, oh, let's do the first one online. Even if it's you're half an hour away, say, let's do it online, we'll get to know each other. Then I'll see the facility.
Right. It's a lot better than a phone call. I agree. But there is something missed in the ability to really build a rapport. It can be done on Zoom. I do it on Zoom all the time. But there's still something to be able to shake somebody's hand, look them in the eyes, see their full body posture, read the room, There's still something to be said for that.
You're right. This is a relationship business. If the seller doesn't like and trust the buyer, not going to trust their company and their people to him or her. And if the same thing goes the other way, if a buyer doesn't feel warm fuzzies about the sellers. Is, something's off here. And if I feel something's off, it's not going to get better. It's time to say pass.
That's something a lot of people do miss. We talk about this a lot on the show. And I always tell people there are two areas in the world that if you got or two skills in the world, if you got these two skills down really well, you could write your ticket in any realm. And the first of those two skills is building deep rapport with other human beings. If you can get on the phone or a Zoom call and really get to know somebody and build rapport with them, you're ahead. The second one is enrolling people into your vision, being able to create a culture and a movement and to lead people towards a direction. If you can build rapport, then and then create a movement, you can do almost anything.
Yeah, it's good advice.
How in all these years that you've been doing this, how important do you see the relationship side of it? Because over money, over the books, over everything else. What do you see that as being the most important?
Yes. First of all, from my case, my position and people in the M&A industry, you have to have relationships with the, shall I say, the platinum level referral sources who are going to entrust their clients to their good clients for you to work with. And it carries all the way through. It's a people business. This is not $500 million deals where a group of CFOs come in with the spreadsheets and say, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. This is even at a $20 million deal or even 30, 40. These owners are overwhelmingly in favor of having someone take care of their people, their customers. They want to see the name on the door 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, they want to know that their employees and their own customers and their business, the brand and legacy they created are in safe pair of hands. You mentioned earlier you're a Rotarian. You were the president twice. I don't know if you noticed on my LinkedIn profile, I was in Rotary International for a little while. That said, talk about the different types of businesses that you've worked with. Are there any type of businesses you just don't work with, or you do the full gamut of industrial, manufacturing, and home services, the whole 9 yards, or is there some area that your expertise is?
No, we're generalists. I use the analogy of a CPA.
Mm-hmm.
CPA can do taxes for almost every business. Maybe there's a specialty business you need an industry expert, but taxes are taxes, financial statements are financial statements. What someone does to help a client buy or sell a business crosses industry lines. We choose not to work with professionals like doctors, dentists. We don't do, based on size, we're looking at companies that are of a decent size that you have a better chance of getting rid of owner dependency. So, we're not going to compete with the brokers selling the deli, the dry cleaner, the one-off restaurant, that type of thing.
It's tough for those too, for those doctors and dentists and stuff like that, because they're so dependent upon the advisor, right? I know we used it. I have allergies, really bad allergies. From the time I was tiny, probably 8 or 9 years old, until I was in my 20s, we went to Dr. Raustong until he retired, right? But the day he retired, we found an office closer to where we live because we were driving 25, 30 miles into town to go to him because that's who we always went to.
Yeah.
He's the guy. My dad had he had thyroid cancer, and he was the ear, nose, and throat specialist that I identified that and saved his life. So he was one of those guys who is just, until he retired, that's who we went to. But once he retired, we didn't go to his office, and whoever he sold it to or whatever his business went to, we did some referrals and found somebody else, right? So those are tough to sell just because you're going to that guy because it's him. You're going to that chiropractor. Like, I'm looking for a good chiropractor around here. When I find one, I'll ride that chiropractor until he's retired. I won't go anywhere else because, that's pretty touchy having somebody, look at your medical records and make life choices for you, or, align your spine and hope they don't paralyze you on accident.
Yeah, you're right. It is. That's as personal as it gets, those things we're talking about. And, and that's why I've seen deals in those spaces, whether it's accounting or medical things, and a lot of it is tied to continuing revenue. that, people aren't going to just go to another one because it's closer, because my buddy's not there anymore, or someone bought it and raised the rates, which is what's going on with veterinarians. I know our vets, the founders, son took it over, second generation sold it in a roll up, and the people are great. Definitely the prices have gone up, etc.
That, and on top of it, you have all the regulations, right? In order for, you either have to be a doctor of the same, with all the license and everything, or you have to set up a medical service organization or a dental service organization, and then you're dealing with people who are, if they're spending the money to build a MSO or DSO out, then they're sophisticated enough that they've got their own teams, and I can see why you'd avoid that. Now, you're being in the Seattle area, you're one of the I think there's probably maybe less than a dozen hotspots for technology across the United States. You got the Bay Area, San Francisco, you got, Seattle, Washington, Portugal, that's where Microsoft and up in that area, where a lot of small tech companies are. And then, some other places in the world, where New York and other stuff that are small tech centers. Do you get to deal with a lot of the tech side of things too, or?
A little bit.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It just depends on the type of tech business, and not emerging companies. We're not, we're obviously not in the let's raise money, let's gamble on it. Sometimes it manifests itself that anyone in tech thinks they're a SaaS business when they're not a SaaS business, and they should get paid for it, a company like a SaaS business. I do have a couple of SaaS for prospective clients, and I bring in a friend of mine in California who his company has a SaaS division, and they know it. I'm not gonna, I don't want to learn it. It's just it's a different world. So we like operating businesses, and there are some operating businesses that produce some kind of technology or help companies use that technology, things like that.
Okay. And then, is there anything that's your favorite? Like, if you could line out a list of clients that were, I don't know, pest control, that's what you do all day long. Is there something you just really love selling?
No, not by business type. We like operating businesses in our size range, and we want, on our website it says we want to work with nice people. I would sooner work with on a little smaller deal with a great client than a larger deal right in our sweet spot with a client that's comes across as a jerk.
I used to have one on my website that says I have a whole quota of 1, and I have to reserve that for in case I have to put that hat on.
Yeah.
So you can't be one ever. But that said, it was just kind of a semi joke, because I don't deal with people I don't like either. You hit a certain point in your life where you've got enough income coming in and stuff like that. If I'm miserable working with you, I don't stick around, right? I just, I'll tell you ahead of time. We end it pretty quickly if I think I can't work with somebody, or if I think they're going to be, if I see the phone ring and I dread answering it, that's not doing them any service and not doing me any service.
Yeah, I've had clients I've had a few over the years. Everyone has. Usually when I figure out with my clients, if I pick up the phone, how long it's going to be. In fact, there's one, he's been a friend for many years, and he's been a client 3 or 4 times. And I referred him to his attorney, and I joked once I had a call with so-and-so, and I was off the phone in 20 minutes. And the attorney said, "How did you do that?"
I'm that guy. I am that guy. I have a gift for gab. So I have and it's funny is I'll respect you. Hey, I got to go. I'll end it right there, because I know I'm that guy, right? Where I have a couple friends, even my own sister, I was like, I got to go, and they'll still keep talking. They're like, no, you don't understand. I have a client here. I got to go, and they'll just keep going. I'm not that guy, but I'll call you for a 2-minute call, and we'll be on there for an hour. So
yeah. So what I would do with this particular person is call them and say, look, I'm on the road. I have a meeting in 25 minutes. I have 20 minutes to talk.
That said, the that's not a bad thing in a lot of cases because you do get to build a rapport that way, right?
You
One of
do.
the biggest flaws I see with new guys getting into the space wanting to buy a company is they get on there and within 3 minutes they're starting to ask for financials. And
Yeah. Believe me, that's not new, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming more prevalent as we've seen. Yeah, let's just face it. So many colleges or universities are teaching acquisitions, entrepreneurship through acquisitions,
mhm.
and there should be criteria for buying or qualifications for buying a business uh, that sellers should have, and it's not just money. I have seen so many deals. In fact, one uh, a week or so ago, a past client, I helped him buy 5 companies. He's now on number 7 or 8. He got a bolt-on acquisition, and he said, there were multiple offers. I was the lowest, and I got it because they said I was the best buyer. So
Right.
it's building that relationship and talking about what you can do, not just, "Hey, I took a class, and I wanna buy a business." And, you don't have, as I mentioned before, don't if you don't have that experience managing people, processes, money, and enthusiasm, uh, maybe you should get it.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. There's a reason why search funds and I've interviewed the guys that like the OGs, the guys David Dotson and those guys he was like he created like the second search fund ever. First one was out of Harvard. He teaches the ETA program at Stanford. I interviewed him, and one of the things we discussed is like why do search funds take 24 to 36 months to find a business? He goes like it's by design because these guys are straight out of MBA. A lot of them haven't ever had a job, and it takes 36 months to kind of build the fortitude and understand, especially if you're one of the investors that this guy can handle the business, and you train them along the way. He says a lot of the training they need to run the business happens through the search process and evaluating multiple companies and building relationship with different CEOs, and a lot of those skills transfer into being able to run it when they have it. And that's the reason by design they want them to take 24 to 36 months to actually do the acquisition. So
Yeah, well, that makes sense because they're buyers of all types and sizes when it comes to experience and abilities, and just saying, "I wanna do it," doesn't mean you can. And
yeah.
it's sometimes it's a good for them to have an advisor, uh, that they're gonna pay money to because, you know, that's the first test. I am really serious. I'm going to hire someone that's gonna help me through the process, hold my hand, make sure I don't do something stupid, ask the right questions, get the right answers, put me on the spot, and all of that. And, we're seeing with the economy today, I've seen buyers that it's a great excuse for them to say, "No, I think, this is not the right time given the tariffs," or, "The stock market went down and I didn't pull my equity out to fund the deal. And so I think I'm not gonna do it." Well, they weren't gonna do it anyway. They were
Right.
gonna be one of the, 94% that of buyers that never buy, and I've always taught 90 to 95. I don't know if do you know my friend Richard Parker with
Yeah.
Diomo?
Yeah.
So Richard told me the other day, he says, "Yeah, I use 94% now." I think with all these searchers out there, it's climbed from 90. Uh, and it's a fun process, but you have to go into it that you're a hunter, not a trapper. So you have to go out and get them, and you have to be willing to make the kill. And, it's eat what you kill, right?
It is, and I've seen more than one. I've been only been in this space. I owned a real estate investment firm. I've done a bunch of different stuff. I was in the military, got out, became a defense contractor. All my friends were making money in the .com. Went into that, got burned out in it. Got a marketing degree. Was a marketing coach. And, started one of my clients was a real estate investment fund group. Got into that, figured out how profitable it was. Had a conflict with that particular client because he bought my marketing agency. But anyway, ran started my own real estate investment fund, and did that really well for 8 or 10 years, 2007, 2017, and then the market shifted on me, and they kind of got into this about 2019, 2020. So 4 or 5 years now. I like the advisory service side of it because I'm partially retired. So I bought a pest control company at the beginning. It was way too small. And then I realized I just don't want to be the operator. And I don't care what and I'm friends with Jeremy Harbour, Carl Allen, all these guys who sell that you can buy a company, put somebody else in as the operator. Yeah, you can, but it's not as easy as they make it out. That's marketing hype, right? You got to be willing to get in there and run this thing yourself for a while and
Oh yeah.
be able to run it well until you can. No, a lot of people just miss out on. It takes 12 months to 18 months to place a great operator, a good CEO, to hunt them down, place them, and see that they work. And you might go through 2 before then. Who's going to run this thing until that happens, right?
You have to know how things work so you know when things are off track. And I'll
Yeah.
give you 2 quick examples. My client I just mentioned, who's has the gift of gab. First company he bought, he bought in a more scientific based industry. He was a business guy at banking and finance, and the owner had like 40 some years experience in the industry and owned the company for 20. It had grown to the point it needed a business person. But if that owner worked part-time, because he could see things going off kilter almost immediately, whether it was through numbers or jobs or actions that you, me, or that buyer would take a long time to figure out. And you have to know that stuff before you can have someone else do it. So, and I want to tie back to my being in Rotary. Every year we go to Antigua in the Caribbean. Every February, we take students from the Bellevue, Washington School District's tech program. We donate computers and set up Wi-Fi networks. And as a little plug for that, we've donated over 10,000 computers with laptops now, 1,500 or more every year, last few years. And we found a wonderful, absolutely wonderful Italian restaurant there. And when I first called to make the reservation, a local had referred it to us. The son of the owner answered, and I said to my wife, "This guy's really Italian, and mom is really Italian." And the restaurant is Mamma Mia, I think, in Antigua. But the story for business is we got to know her. We went there 3 or 4 times in 10 days.
Right.
She's from Rome. For somehow she owned this restaurant building, and it's a boutique hotel on the coast. And she had it with a general manager for a few years, and it went downhill to the fact that she had to come in and renovate, re-up, do everything to get it basically a quasi startup, because you don't get the passion for a small business. And this is a people business, a restaurant and a boutique hotel. If they don't like the service, there are plenty other places to go to.
But aren't most businesses fashion's business? Like, I'll give you a good example. I still have a stake in that small pest control company. I bought it to employ some family members, so I still work with them and chat with them and help them do some marketing in it. But I sold it back to them because I'm 1,800 miles away now. It doesn't make sense. But that said, the reason customers come back is both my cousin and uncle that worked there. They're fun to be around. So when they show up to do a job for you, they're having a good time with the clients. They're not making them uncomfortable about having cockroaches or bed bugs. They're like, yeah, this happens all the time. People get these, but they can build a relationship with people. They're fun to be around, and they have a passion for what they do. The reason that he's got clients that keep coming back and keep coming back isn't because we got the lowest prices. We're down there, but it's because the relationships he can build with people. And most small businesses are like that. Most small businesses, I think, unless you're in a commodity industry where you're trying to be the cheapest guy on the street, that's a quick way to be broke in my world.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of, and I'm not arguing at all. I'm saying there are some businesses where the business may not know the end customer, but they have the relationship with whom they sell to. And that person may fabricate what they did or pass it on. So if you go into Target and you buy something, it had many steps along the way from a distributor who bought it from a manufacturer who bought parts from many other manufacturers.
Just because you pick something up at the store, I pick up this mouse. That mouse may have been made by Logitech, but if you dig it around and there might be five things in there they order from somebody else, right? And it wasn't until I got into this industry where it really hit me is like there's a lot of things like I didn't know people made that, right? Somebody made the the little optical device that goes inside of the mouse that I'm holding on to. Somebody made the little magnet that goes onto the power cord that goes onto the Mac, the way that Mac attaches to my laptop, right?
Yeah, there are so many niche businesses that, when you're in this industry, you say, yeah, I guess someone did have to make that. Or we're an aerospace country, Boeing.
Yeah.
And all the Boeing suppliers, we're working with one now. And you see all the stuff that they make, and they'll say, well, you walk in the plane and you walk down the aisle, you'll see, and they'll start rattling off all the little parts that they've had part of the process to make and finish and get into the final product.
Let's go into like kind of what's happening in right now, right? Let's just kind of jump from where we're talking about. Let's talk about the current economic and political environment and some of the uncertainty that some of the business sellers and even business buyers might have about what's happening. What's your gut feel on all this?
I've been through it before, and I just told a couple clients in the last few days, simply this too will pass. I mean, we had COVID, we had the real estate collapse, the Great Recession in like 09 or so.
Yep.
9/11. We've gone through it. We're in the spring of 2025 now. You're right. Uncertainty is the word. I saw a poll yesterday that said the number one word that people pick when describing the current administration is what's going on is chaos.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
There's chaos, there's uncertainty, and a lot of people just don't know what to do. There is worry. I think there are owners who would like to sell or just saying, are they going to discount it because of what's going on? If I'm not desperate to sell. And let's face it, I heard on one of your other podcasts, someone said most businesses are sold because they're distressed, divorce, death, something like that. I say no. I say most businesses are sold when there's burnout, retirement, something happens in the personal life. But in these cases, if you got a business, say you're making $1 million a year, and you say, well, the buyer's going to try to discount it because of what's going on with tariffs and uncertainty and all of that. I'll hang on to it for a little while. I'm still making $1 million a year. And on the buy side, some people have backed out, not surprisingly. I think there's still a lot of buyers out there. I know there are some that are saying, well, if the seller wants to sell now with what's going on, they're going to take a lower price. Not necessarily. One of the true rules of business buying and selling is the seller controls the deal if it's a good business. Mature, profitable, they control it. The buyer controls the deal if it's a bad business. And that's why when you hear statistics and people go, well, 80 or 90% of businesses never sell, it's because they're not worth buying. But the ones worth buying definitely sell.
I think the reason these guys say that it's the 4 Ds or 5 Ds, divorce, disease, I forgot what them all are. Death. What's the other one?
Disability might be one.
Or dysfunction, like the business is in distress, right?
Yeah.
They're selling it because they've run it, or something's happened. The reason that is the reason that a lot of people think that's what's for sale out there, and the reason that that's what they're looking for is those are more negotiable, right? When somebody has pressure from that side, when they're facing one of the 5 Ds, they no longer thinking about selling. They probably need to sell in some realm, so that gives more more leverage for the buyer to, to get creative. And a lot of these guys are looking for creative deals either because they like the challenge of it. There's actually, I know a couple guys right now who, one of the guys I talked to, he's got $2-3 million sitting in his account, but he just likes the creative side of it. So he's trying to find more owner finance deals, do less banking. He has a bunch of, kind of like me, he has a real estate portfolio he doesn't want to leverage as collateral. So he doesn't want to go the SBA route.
And if you're willing to do that, there are plenty of companies that aren't worth much the owner has a decent paying job as a company owner, but not much more. Because there's got to be profit over and above what it takes to pay everyone who's involved in running the business. And if it's not there, a buyer controls the deal. It also comes down to, we're talking about the economy, but it also comes down to type of business for a buyer. Mm-hmm. And again, the economy thinks it's going to change. It's going to pass. We'll get things settled out. Unfortunately, there's going to be some small businesses hurt that shouldn't be hurt. But one of your episodes, someone was talking about these guys coming out of grad school and wearing a 3-piece suit and buying like a heavy equipment business, landscaping business. And in my book, Buying a Business That Makes You Rich, there's a story of a guy was a CPA and he wanted to get rid of his business. It was a cabinet making shop. And he had left being an accountant because he thought it'd be just so cool to make things. And he couldn't understand his employees, why they didn't have the passion he had. I remember some of the things, they care more about their next cigarette break than what they're doing. They live to get off of work and go have a beer or go fishing. And why can't, talking about why can't they be in here and, just giving it their all for the company. He just didn't understand them. And the business was suffering.
Yeah.
So it's something where your skills match up.
That was me talking about that. We had a guy, I host twice a month on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of every month. I host a hangout where buyers can come on. Occasionally we'll have a seller on. Sometimes I feel bad when a seller comes on because you got 30 buyers and a seller pops in there and like, okay, now they're like just walking into the sharks because they're like, I'll talk to you about selling your company. Like everybody wants to set a meeting with them. But if you're a buyer, if you're a seller and you need to sell, it's a great place to show up because you got 30 people wanting to book a meeting with you right away. That said, one of the guys popped in there. He was right out of Harvard, and or one of the Ivies. I won't call out Harvard. He was. I don't remember if it's Harvard or one. He was an Ivy guy, and he told me he was going to he's going to get into construction. I was like, oh, cool. Was your dad into construction, or did you grow up around construction? No. There's just a lot of it around me. I was like, he was very, very Ivy. He was, I told the story many times on here. Had the sweater vest and everything, right? Like the whole thing. Is very Ivy, very prim and proper. So I used a couple of words that I thought might be a context switch for him. I dropped an F-bomb or two. Like, no, you're effing not. And he's like, oh, how dare you talk to me that way? I said, see? I said, you're getting ready to go into an environment where that's the normal bit. I grew up around construction and stuff. And I said, I promise you, every construction site I've ever seen, at least once a month, 2 grown adults are having a fist fight, somewhere on that facility. Right? If you don't know how to handle that, know that that's partially normal and be able to identify that a little ahead of time when it's dangerous and get rid of those people before that are accustomed to that's how they deal with things, you can get in all kinds of trouble, both, with clients and with liabilities and people getting hurt and workers' comp and everything else, right? And so you have no business being in the construction business. If you want to buy a construction company, go work for one for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Learn how to be a project manager and be around it all the time. And
it's a different culture. You're going to walk into it. It's a culture shock. And I said, they're going to eat you alive, right? They're going to nickname you within 2 feet of you stepping on a construction site. And you're going to think it's funny. They're going to call you Ivy or whatever when you walk in. And you're going to think it's a term of endearment or something. And it's not. It's a total, like this, not lack of trust and lack of respect until you earn it. It's a different environment.
Yeah. And, I don't. These days, you look at any construction site and, and there's a preponderance of Hispanics and other minorities. I think the culture is definitely different, but they work hard and I think they're because they need to support their families.
Yeah.
And And I know I've had clients in construction. My son is in construction. And then, what's the best way to say this is that it's prevalent. It's out there, maybe not as prevalent as it had been.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at buyers and sellers and stuff, how do you figure that out? Like if I was going to, it's one of the things I have to watch. Like when I get people, because of the show and because of the podcast and everything, I get probably a call a week where somebody goes, hey, I want you to help me buy companies. And it's like, okay, first of all, I only do one or two of those at a time. You have to prove, one, that you bought a company or run a company before. I don't do new guys. And then secondly, what are you trying to buy and what's your history in that? And the reason I ask all those questions is because I know that if they're not fitting that culture, if they're not aware of the culture within what they're acquiring, I'm going to hear from it 6 months after they buy that we did something wrong, right? So, or they're never going to fully close. It's going to hit them before closing time, before they have to wire their down payments and stuff, that they're getting into something that's a little bit more than they probably should.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is experience that you have and I have, is knowing what questions to ask potential buyers and potential sellers. For sellers, it's, I always start with things like, have you talked to a financial advisor to see what, basically, if you can give them an estimate of what it might be worth, and you can't do that. You can't tell what the market's going to do, but whether you say it's worth 2 million, 4 million, 6 million range, what does your advisor say about that? What are you going to do? And buyers should be asking that of sellers. What are you going to do? I know you want to sell, but what are you going to do? And if they have a good answer, that's great. If they say, well, I'll figure it out, they're going to get seller remorse. If the answer is, oh, I'm going to retire, does your spouse want you around 24/7? And with buyers, it's the things you mentioned. What have you done? Why do you want to do this? Oh, what kind of skills do you have? Have you managed people? Have you had budgetary responsibility? Things like that. Make them aware. This is going to take a year or two. We've been lucky on the buyer side. We've had just a few times over the years where someone finds and buys something in 6 months or less, but it's so rare. Something fell in their lap in month 1, month 2, and they got the deal done.
Yeah. Usually the case is, especially with the people I know, they don't even know what they want to buy yet, but they think, well, I'm business agnostic, like meaning I don't care if it's manufacturing or home services. I was like, you are now, but you won't be, right? You don't know what you don't know. So what's going to happen? I just explained it to these new guys. What's going to happen is, and it's the best thing that could happen to you, go out and talk to a dozen business owners. You think you want to own a pest control company? Call a dozen pest control companies and talk to them. Ask them about a day in their life. Yeah. Right? Get to know the industry. Get to know what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis, and then talk to some some people that are thinking about selling.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I've been through this. Like I did I thought I was going to buy a coffee roasting companies. I don't even drink coffee, but I love the smell of it. I thought it would be a great business to own. I think you could turn them into subscription-based recurring revenue businesses if you really planned it out, or if you have the good roasting company and good products. But after 3, 4, 5 months, maybe even 6 months of talking to different roasting companies, calling people I knew, calling my friends and say, who do you know that owns a roasting company? Getting one-on-one Zoom calls with the owners of those and learning the industry, I realized it's just not something I want to be in, right? Learned a lot about the industry, but there's some things about it that kind of reminds me of the diamond industry. The coffee industry is a little bit dirty on the end on how they treat the farmers, the growers, the middlemen, make most of the money, right? And it's something, if you really want to run an ethical company, you got to kind of manage all that and go visit the farmers and make sure that, they're being taken care of and stuff. And I was like, I had young kids at the time. I still have kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old. It just wasn't something I wanted to manage. But you don't know that until you start talking to these customers, until you start talking to businesses. If you're new and you're thinking about getting into industry you've never been in before, I always recommend don't even worry about whether or not they want to sell right away. Just see if business owners in that industry will talk to you and tell you about the industry. Just learn as much as you can about that industry and make sure it's something you're ready to be involved in.
Yeah, and it is a fragmented industry with a lot of companies that, do a little bit of this and a little bit of that for everyone, and so they don't have a focus, so it's hard to scale. When we started out this last part of the conversation talking about what's going on with tariffs and the economy, and one of the things I'm telling buyers now is if you find a company that is what you think you can handle, it's your right size range, you get along with the owner, get the darn deal done. Forget this sharpening the pencil and I'm going to get the best deal, the lowest multiple I can. Get the darn deal done because right now there are not as many good companies out there as there have been even 4-6 months ago because of all the turmoil in the market. And I talked to a searcher a while back and she said, well, I said, I think this company is going to go in this range, the one we're representing. And I'm not going to give you a price. We don't give a price because that would not be fair to our client or a buyer if we give a price and, say the buyer thinks, well, I was going to offer more, so I'll offer that price. And then someone else didn't ask and they offer more. And she goes, so that's a lot more than a 3 multiple of EBITDA. And I said, you're not going to get a manufacturing company at that size for a 3 multiple. They get in these groups and convince each other that, you can buy low, and you can if it's not a good business.
Yeah, there's a generalization out there that says if a company is SBA loanable, that it should be at 3 multiple or lower. They're out there. I've seen people get them done.
Yeah. Well, construction is one that, it's going to be lower in construction than it is if you're manufacturing, especially if you have a proprietary product.
Mm-hmm.
But these days, again, the point is, if you're a buyer and you find a good company, forget sharpening the pencil. In fact, we have a buyer client and he's in due diligence, going to close in about a month. It's going well. A few weeks ago, he said, he called me and he said, that what you told me the other day was the most important piece of advice that you've given me all the time we're working together. I had said, basically what I'm saying now, I said, you like this business, you think you can grow it, you can financially, it's at your upper end. He said, if you want it, go get it. He made a call. He said, what does it take for me to get this company? They told him. He said, done. Had an LOI signed the next day. Didn't quibble. Can I knock off 3%? Nothing like that. Get it done.
The time and energy you're going to spend finding another one when they say no because you're trying to save 3% costs you way more from that 3%.
Oh, yeah.
And if you find a cultural fit and, it's the right industry, it's in the right location, and, the only thing that's holding you back is the numbers slightly off, it's, you can overpay and get yourself in trouble too, especially if you're using leverage, right? If you're using banks and you're paying interest on that money. That's one of the big mistakes I see people all the time. And I used to get on to people all the time. And I ran a real estate business where people would do this on houses. They buy the most expensive house they can barely afford. And then the littlest thing changes and then they can no longer afford it. So I always warn people, quit trying to buy the most expensive business you can buy with the loan that you can get. Unless you see some low-hanging fruit where you can improve those profit margins, you need to give yourself a room, right? What if one of those tariffs does hit you? What if one of your clients doesn't like the new owner, right? You need some margin for, oh no, like the oh no's that this happened, or, one of your biggest clients decides that they're not going to sell, they're going to retire because they're a retirement age as the same retirement age that your guy was, and they shut theirs down, right? This stuff happens, and I see it all the time. They're reluctant to come on the show, so I don't get a lot of shows where, somebody buys a company and then it fails pretty quickly within the first 2 years. But I've talked to at least 5 or 6 in the last 2 months. One came on last week. That said, it was because things changed, right? They bought the company and they made some changes, which people had resistance to, and then the market changed on them a little bit. And the combination is they bought a company that had a 12% margin, and they changed 25% of the company, right? And then they the next thing they know, they're not being able to cover the debt coverage ratio or the debt coverage that they have on their loans.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times, especially first-time buyers, get buyer fever.
Yeah.
I can do anything. I'm so good. Whether they have 20 years experience or 20 months experience, they think they are. So you talk about home buying. There's I don't know if you've seen it, but Progressive Insurance has a commercial, and it's about these people buy the new house, and someone comes up and says, "Oh, I'm replacing the hot water heater that's not good," and the next one is here's your supply of fertilizer to keep your lawn green, and then Progressive says, "Well, you won't have to do that with us," but points in back, and there's a line of about 15 people with all the things the house needs.
Right.
And if you do your due diligence, you're not in that trap of here's what's needed. And if you're smart enough to say, I'm going to do exactly what the seller has been doing till I figure it out.
That's been a recurring conversation here on the show is, especially for new buyers and stuff. They say, well, how fast should I make changes? Like, you shouldn't. First 60 days, you should just sit there and observe everything the way it was running. As a matter of fact, first 60 to 90 days, I highly recommend you just try to run it exactly how the other guy ran it and get that down and figure out how he ran it that way. Sometimes figure out why they run it that way. And then the first group of changes you should make is you should interview every single employee there and said, if you can change one or two things that make this company better, what would you change? And you compare that list to your list. And wherever they match, you can start to tackle some of those things because you have employee buy-in. That's how you build rapport with those guys, right? That's how you build rapport with the existing employees is you start making some of the changes they've been wanting for years. And then you can, once you get that done, you can start making the suggestions. Well, it looks like I think I need these done too. But I've seen so many times where we interviewed a guy. I think this has come up on the show a few times. Interviewed a guy who bought a software company in South Africa, had 21 employees. He goes and starts making changes. Within the first three weeks, 100% of his employees quit, all 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do you mean all 21? He goes, so how was the company run before? Well, the other owner had been gone and been sick for 4 or 5 years battling cancer, and the employees were just left to run it on their own, and they were just maintaining clients, and they weren't making improvements, and they had no quality control. They had no change control as a software company. And I was like, how much did you change like right away? We put change control in. We did X, Y, they put a QA officer in. Like you just disrupted everybody on that team's world. It's really easy in most worlds for good software engineers to find other work.
Yeah. You mentioned about talking to the employees and all that, and they want to be listened to. And a lot of times the seller who's on his or her way out isn't listening to them because they got ideas, and the seller's saying, look, I'm making good money. Why would I want to take the risk of hiring more people, getting a new machine, doing this, doing that? My best story on that goes back quite a few years, but the buyer went in and he gave a short survey to the 4-person senior management team. And the one question was, what's the company's biggest weakness? And to a person, they answered with the one answer he shared with me was someone said, the biggest weakness just walked out the door. And, but they all got it out, and he had rapport then because they listened. He was asking for their input. They know what's going on a lot of times more than the owner who's coasting because they're doing well.
I manage everything I do, and I've done this for years. Somehow I've oversimplified it with 4 questions. 3 I ask at every meeting, 1 I add later on. And it's done really well. Every time I've been doing this since I ran huge divisions at tech companies and all the way to running my own thing. And it always starts with a pat on the back. What are we doing really well? Right. So I tell this to every person buying a company, ask everybody on their company, what are we doing really well? What do we specialize in? What are we the leader in? Right. And then the second question is, what can we do better? What can we improve upon? So it's always, what are we doing better? What are we doing better than anybody else? Where can we fix a few things? And then the third question is, what are we totally missing? Right? Or there's something we're not doing in this space, we're not doing in this market. There's a piece of equipment we're missing. Something's missing, right? There's a key employee missing. Something's missing, right? And then once a quarter, every once in a while, I throw in the fourth question is, what are we doing that we should totally stop doing? It's not working. It's causing problems. And, you believe that we should probably just quit doing this altogether.
Yeah.
And if those four questions, I've been managed to manage all kinds of stuff. And I don't think it has to be that difficult. I think if you could stick with just at least those four on a regular basis, what are we doing really well? So the reason you want to know what you're doing really well, so you don't accidentally mess some of that stuff up, right? Let's leave that stuff alone. Everybody thinks we're doing well. Our customers love this stuff. Let's leave that alone. Okay, where can we improve, right? And what are the customers? And I ask the customers too. Like that. I do the same thing with the employees. I do the customers. What are we doing really well? What can we improve? What are you having to go get from other people? What are we missing? What do you wish that we did, right? And then every once in a while, you got to ask them. It's like, are we doing anything we should probably just stop doing? Is there anything we do that just totally annoys you? All right, we're running out of time, man. I love chatting with you. We could probably chat all day. Like I told you beforehand, I'm one of those guys that got the gift of gab. We'll sit here for 2 hours, and we're supposed to do a 1 hour show. That said, what are some of the takeaways you want people to know after hearing what we spoke today?
I think. Okay, go ahead.
Of you, of what you do, of the market, what would you want people to walk away knowing? 2 or 3 takeaways.
Okay, for the right person with that entrepreneurial spirit who is not a creator to start something from scratch. And again, they have those skills, managing people, processes, money, and enthusiasm. It's a great thing. It is hard work to find one. It is hard work to get into the business and operating it. And you can't just say, I'm going to work on the business from day one, because you don't know what that means if you don't know what's going on in the business. But in my latest book, Exit, Restyle, Grace, and More Money, there's a couple chapters that apply. Well, most of it applies to buyers also. But the second chapter is maybe it's not about it. There's more than just the numbers, that kind of thing. And it's just concentrate on the customers, the landlord, the lease situation, the suppliers, the IT, your key employees, et cetera, et cetera. Are they keeping great employees, or is there a lot of turnover kind of thing? But the third chapter is maybe it is about the numbers, and everyone goes to the numbers first. Those other things tell you where the numbers are going. And if you're buying a small business, just realize you are going to be facing small business accounting. It is not GAAP. It is not consistent. It has a lot of not nefarious, but just sloppiness.
I use the word creative.
Yeah. The accountant's really a bookkeeper. The bookkeeper is really a data entry person. And the owner gives them instructions, but doesn't know a thing about debits and credits or anything else. And get over that, sort it out, and realize if they're saying this business makes, I don't care if it's $100 or $1 million or anything else, but half of it is adding back things that are non-essential personal expenses. You might want to put your skeptical glasses on and say, I don't think so.
Okay. And then how do people reach out to you? Where do they find your books? How do they, if they want to work with you, if they got a business in your market that they want to either buy or sell, what's the best way for somebody to reach you?
Yeah. Nokomisadvisory.com, Nokomis Advisory.com. There's a contact form. If you put in that you found us through this show, we'll send you which one of our books you want, buying or selling. Books are available on Amazon. Just put John Martinka in, and you'll find them. And it's been a pleasure, Ron.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here. Hang out for a few minutes, and we'll call that a show.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.